do. Hey, it says I'm live. I know I'm alive. I'm alive all the time. I never die. Neither do you. Bosto, to all of you, welcome. Thank you for tuning in, all you fabulous people. Yeah, let me turn myself down because I truly am living in multiple times, right? I can hear myself and then I can speak to myself into the future. Hello, Deborah Truax. How are you doing? Good afternoon to you. So I get the buses feeling happy. Yeah, grab the seats while you can, you know? So favor and favor means empowered to prosper. If you're prospering, I mean, I don't know, could you prosper in bad times? I mean, can, something, you understand prosper being good. I don't know. The whole construct, good, evil again. As Trina and I were talking about, and I tell you, our show, A Second Look, I mean, deep stuff, man, comes out in those things. You really got to watch it twice, sometimes twice, thrice, to get the whole thing. But yeah, imagine being in a place where you're actually above the whole construct of good and evil, darkness, light, an existence where those concepts don't even exist. You can look down at it like, you're watching, you know, your cell phone or something, a miniature. Saw one of the movies back, oh man, I know it was one of the cheesy ones they did about, but anyway, it was about Mount Olympus and how the gods, they would look down in the pools, and the pools were not water, they were actually mercury. Anyway, that gets into alchemy and a lot of other magic. But anyway, so how are y'all? Good to see you. Happy birthday to those who are doing it. I think tonight Nina the Mystic has her Hump Day show over on her channel. So check it out. Solutions for Humanity. When I see you, well, thank you. That's very kind. Humbled. It's, just it's just far out to be here. Hey, Wise April, how you doing? Good to see you. Basto. Hey, David Barry, good to see you. Susie Q, how are you? Wow, that made two. So we made it rhyme all the time. And that's how we do it. So got a lot to cover. There are people in our tribe here that, facing challenges. And I firmly believe, by the knowledge that is shared here, that it helps all of us. And meditating today, it's really important that no matter what the topic is, that you see all sides of it. We're so trained and indoctrinated to only look at one side, the light. But yet, the light is ambiguous. What light? Which light? What kind of light? And it's hard to define. But yet we're indoctrinated to reject anything that has to do with darkness. And even our ancestors that were nomadic, hunters and gatherers, nighttime offered opportunities that the daytime didn't offer. And you never hear that side of the story. What you hear is that, well, they were so ignorant, they just gathered into caves and huddled together. No, our species has never been like that. Our species took down dinosaurs. We took down mammoths. That's not true. And when the moon, and that's why the moon is revered as a goddess, the moon allowed opportunities that, again, you couldn't get in the daylight. So something to think about. There we go. Got a lot of stuff to cover, so I'm going to get right into it. Cheers to everyone, wherever you are, whatever time zone it may be. Whatever your libation, of choice is enjoy it. Cheers to everyone, and let's get right into this. I think you're going to enjoy it. Just to let you know, so there we go. That's a great sound effect, isn't it? Sounds like wind, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. So I have these worksheets in PDF forms if anyone wants them, and you will want them, trust me. So let's get right into this. Now we're getting into an area that many people say is very dark, very evil. Hey, evil is what you define it as. Remember, they said at the very beginning, this doesn't exist. Only what's up here. We're going to find out how true that may be. So I introduced this to everyone yesterday. This is E squared. I love this gal. I mean, I'm reaching out to her to see if she'll come on, because this is the type of people that we all just would really dig. And her writing style is such as well that it sounds like she's one of us. And I know that seems a little, you know, you know, elitist, but hey. All right. So experiment one is, because this ties into what we're reading in the Adamu. It really does. So check this out. Everyone else is waiting for eternity, and the shaman says, how about tonight? The thing is, folks, eternity is already here. As we discussed yesterday, Trina and I, we're living, and this is an absolute truth, we live in multiple time realities. I am the future of what my past was. I leave messages, recorded messages, video messages to myself all the time. You should too. It's one way to begin to validate a lot of things. So anyway, eternity is right now. All right, the premise. This experiment will prove to you once and for all there is a loving, abundant, totally hip force in the universe. Some people call it God. You can call it prana, all there is, or Cosmo Kramer, for all I care. The problem up until now is we've had to take this force on faith. We weren't allowed to see it or touch it, but we've sure been asked to do lots of things in its name, like tithing and meditate and put ashes on our head. I must prefer the idea of a energy force that moves on a two-way street. Does give and take ring a bell, anyone? In this experiment, we're going to let the FP know that, baby, it's now or never. So what is the FP? The FP stands for field of potentiality. Each one of us are an FP, but there is the FP. Okay. We are so over believing in something that gets its jollies playing hide and seek. We want an irrefutable proof, and we want it now. You know those four little initials, ASAP? Well, those are the ones we're shooting for. We are going to give the FP exactly 48 hours to give us a sign, a clear sign, a sign that cannot be written off. Neon would work. Because we bought this idea that the force is vague and mysterious. We do not really expect to find it, or at least we're not surprised when we don't, because we haven't been trained to notice this awe-inspiring, energizing, life-altering force, which is zooming in and around and through us without our awareness. What me? Wait. Sun Bear said was spoken. If your medicine doesn't grow corn, of what use is it? Whiskey! I just. Fire sign theater. For those who want to wait for the pearly gates, go right ahead. It's like a modern day person refusing to use electricity. All you have to do is access the electricity is find an outlet. Plug in an electronic device or appliance and voila, you get all sorts of cool stuff. Toasted bread, music that's piped in from radio towers, movies, news, and fellow humans eating slugs on deserted islands. We have to we have to retrain ourselves to think of this energy force the same way we think of electricity. We don't wonder, am I good enough to plug my toaster into the outlet? Or have I prayed long enough or deep enough to deserve the right to flick on the kitchen lights? You know, if you had to chop vegetables in the dark, ooh, yeah. We don't feel guilty for wanting to turn on the radio and listen to our favorite station. The FP is just as non-prejudiced and available as electricity once we make the decision to really look for it. And it's not that hard to find. Anecdotal evidence. God is not the pushover that some people would have you believe. Alex Frotnich in Skinny Bones by Barbara Park. This is the section where we talk about the elephant in the room. Yes, I'm talking about God. Unless you crawled out from underneath a cabbage leaf, you've probably observed that an awful lot of people talk about this guy named God. 1 out of every 7 days is devoted to worshiping him. Buildings of all shapes and sizes have been built to honor him. Many newspapers have a religious section right next to the political section, the local news, the weather, and the crossword puzzle. Some version of the dude, to borrow a moniker from the cult classic The Big Lebowski, exists in every culture that has ever existed. Even physicists whose sole line of work is studying the properties and interactions of matter and energy know about the invisible force. Most of them do not call it God. Albert Einstein, for example, claimed no belief in a traditional God, but he sure as heck knew there was something a whole lot juicier out there in the cosmos. That juice, he said, was all he really cared about. The rest, he claimed, was just details. The God most of us believe in is an invention of man, fabricated for the sake of convenience. We accept this human-made God as an indisputable fact, but it makes no sense. If God is love, if God is perfect, if God is all the other beneficent descriptions we ascribe to him, why would he toss anyone into a lion's den? Furthermore, why would anyone in their right mind want to hook up with a capricious and unjust God who just gets his jollies from punishing them? Even the ditziest of women know theoretically she shouldn't hang out with a guy who might hurt her. I mean, who needs it? God as a terrorist. I don't know if God exists, but it would certainly be better for his reputation if he didn't. Jules Renard, and the French author. No sooner had I mastered my ABCs than I was taught that I, little Pammy Sue Grout, was a miserable sinner and had fallen short of the glory of God. It was a fact. Same as 2 plus 2 equals 4, and elemental V is more than one letter in the alphabetical lineup. The only redeeming part of this all-important lesson is at least I wasn't alone. Turns out, everybody else in the world is a sinner too. Even Mrs. Beckwith, my tender-hearted kindergarten teacher, who let me bring Pokey, my pet turtle, to class every other Monday. The bad thing about being a sinner is it guarantees a one-way ticket to hell. It was a little hard getting a handle on hell, being I hadn't traveled much further than the Kansas border, but according to my dad, hell was not a place you wanted to be. It was hotter than my Aunt Gwen and Uncle Tom's home in Texas in the summer the air conditioner broke. And unlike that vacation that ended after 4 days, you stay in hell eternity. Do you understand eternity? He said. You think of how you felt last December 26th, waiting for Christmas again. To escape, the escape clause is that you can get saved. So when I was 4 years old and the church organist playing, just as I am, I walked in front of the little Methodist church in Cannon, Kansas, popped down my knobby little 4-year-old knees and asked the good Lord to forgive me for my sins. My family from a long line of Methodists collectively breathed a sigh of relief. Dad and Mom called all the aunts and uncles, and that night there was a party to broadcast the good news. Well, our oldest is officially saved now, they crowed proudly. At least we can be assured that Pam is going to heaven. The best part, they figured, was that my conversion couldn't help but set a good example for my sister Becky, who was 2, and my brother Bobby, who was only 3 months old, although I secretly hoped they would give him until he was old enough to talk. Of course, you didn't want to take any chances. I mean, Jesus could come back at any time, night or day now. He was like a thief in the night, you know. He could come in the morning, and while you were stirring those circles in your Captain Crunch cereal, he could come in the recess while you were hanging out with your knees on the monkey bars. He could even come at 2 in the morning while you were asleep, which would be a real problem if you happened to be a heavy sleeper. Jesus could snatch you up before you had time to get sleep out of your eyes. And that you didn't want to think about. I mean, Aunt Gwen and Uncle Ted's house was hot. At the same time, I was learning to accept my true sinful identity. I was being told over and over again that God is love, never mind that the church presented God as some sort of hidden camera that watches over everything I did. It made no rational sense, but of course, I was only 4. What did I know? Even though I was yearning close to being a perfect kid, I mean, I made straight A's, never tried to fight with my siblings, stayed away from drugs and alcohol, and even made my bed without being told. I felt I was consistently being critiqued by this loving God, who was sitting up in heaven, gleefully rubbing his hands together whenever I screwed up, which, gosh darn it, oops, there it goes again. I used his name in vain, seemed to be pretty often. What a legacy to dump on an innocent child. God looks like ZZ Top, an other annoying miss. Thomas Merton wrote, our idea of God tells us more about ourselves than about him. Ask the average individual if he believes in God, he will probably say something like, well, duh. However, it's unlikely he will ever ask himself exactly what he means by God. When pressed, he probably offers some cliche-ish about, the guy upstairs. Trying to define God, of course, is impossible. God isn't static, any more than electricity or light is static. God lies beyond a material world of matter, shape, and forms. It fills the cosmos, saturates reality, supersedes time and space. But that doesn't stop us from trying to construct definitions. Here are the top 8 whoppers we've made up about God. Number 1, God is a him. Even though the progressive churches sometimes refer to God as she, the FP doesn't really have a gender. We certainly don't talk about Mrs. Electricity or Mr. Gravity, do we? The more appropriate pronoun would be it. The FP is a force field that runs the universe, the same energy source that grows flowers, forms scabs over skin, knees, and constantly pushes for wholesomeness. God is more like the Force in Star Wars, a presence that dwells within us, a principle by which we live. That's why like Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader have become such phenomenon. Star Wars is a myth that speaks to us at a deep gut level. Some part of us knows that the Force is with us and that we, through our words, thoughts, and deeds, create the world. Whopper number 2, God looks like ZZ Top, makes black check marks after your name, and is basically too busy working on world hunger to care about your sorry ass. That's my point. No, about you. God, if you believe and accepted the box, is a little like Boo Radley in To Kill a Mockingbird. This mysterious neighbor constantly peering out the window of his penthouse suite, waiting to catch us doing something naughty. Naughty? We can't really see him, but we've been properly warned that he's there, watching, judging, monitoring our every move. If you don't follow this commandment, or if you break the rule, God just might send his angel secret service after your sorry ass and bop you on the head like little bunny foo-foo. 3, God plays favorites. The FP is a force field that equally is available to everyone. It's a natural capacity in us all, not an exclusive gift bestowed upon a few. In fact, that is the primary lesson Jesus taught. God is within. You are part of God. You can perform miracles. To worship Jesus the way we do is a little like worshiping Benjamin Franklin because he first discovered electricity. Ben Franklin sent that kite up an electrical storm so we could use the principle he demonstrated. He didn't do it so that we would build temples to him, paint pictures of him, and wear little commemorative keys around our necks. He wanted us to take the principle of electricity and use it, which we do to run radios, computers, air conditioners. We had stopped with Ben's discovery the way we did with Jesus's discovery. We all be sitting in the dark. Benjamin Franklin didn't invent electricity any more than Jesus invented spiritual principles. Lightning and the resulting electricity have always been available. We just didn't realize and didn't know how to access it. Galileo didn't invent gravity when he dropped the wooden ball off the Leaning Tower of Pisa. He just demonstrated it. Likewise, Jesus demonstrated spiritual principles that he wanted us to use and develop. We've wasted 2,000 years worshiping this idol of him instead of using the principles he taught us. Look through the Bible, and nowhere does Jesus say, worship me. He calls to us as follow me. There's a big difference. By making Jesus out to be a hero, we miss the whole point. Jesus wasn't saying, I'm cool. Make me statues of me. Turn my birthday into a huge commercial holiday. He was saying, hey, here, look at the possibility. Look what we humans are capable of. Jesus is our brother, our legacy, the guy we're supposed to emulate. What Jesus was trying to tell us is that the churches, the religious leaders, and all their blaring rhetoric has drowned out God's truth. They've pulled the wool over our eyes by failing to mention the fact that the FP is not an object of worship, but a very real presence and a principle by which we should live. Whopper number 4. God rewards our suffering and gives brownie points for our sacrifice, better known as life sucks and then you die. Many of us think life is some sort of boot camp for heaven. We believe this short lifespan is only a test for the paradise we're eventually going to earn. If we hang on and bear it, we'll someday walk through those pearly gates and be happy. These errors in thinking have been condensed into living facts. Nothing is plainer than the inevitability of sorrows and trials. But what if it isn't necessary? What if there is no reason to be poor or to get sick, or do anything but live an abundant, exciting life? What if these tragic, difficult lives are another rumor made up by the churches and cemented into our consciousnesses by years and years of conditioning? What I'd like to suggest is that this heaven you're waiting for is available now, and that you've been sold a bill of goods and a bunch of BS about who you are and what is possible. Whopper number 5, God is just so demanding. The FP doesn't judge. It doesn't punish. It doesn't think. Well, Sammy C was a good boy yesterday, helping the little old lady cross the street. I think I'll answer his prayer about wanting to win the lottery. Those are thoughts Clarence Thomas might think. The FP doesn't need anything. It requires nothing of us. It makes no demands. It doesn't like Mother Teresa more than Celine Dion. Only misinformed humans, scrambling desperately to make sense of their world, came up with a God who plays eeny, meeny, miny, mo with our lives. A God who likes and dislikes, and some people we do. Our fear has trapped us into a box that plays out our very limited perception. Whopper 6, you don't want to ask too much from God. You certainly you don't want to bug him. As I've already pointed out, the FP is not a person, therefore you cannot bug him. The FP is a power, an unseen energetic force. It isn't finite or limited, so you certainly couldn't ask too much of it. As the old saying goes, you can take an eye drop or a bucket to the ocean. The ocean doesn't care. If anything, we don't use the FP power merely enough. There is an all-powerful force we're talking about here, not some last-minute relief team that comes in to pay the mortgage. The FP is not an adversary that has to be coaxed or to be bargaining at the table. Coaxing, I know what that is. Whopper 7, God is just so vague. Au contraire, mon frere. Once you get rid of the black cloud of rumors and the half-truths that hide your awareness, you'll find the unseen force communicates just as clearly as Dr. Phil does. Once you rid yourself of the blocks, you'll be shown exactly what to do and how to do it. Again, we need to condition ourselves to think of God, the FP, more like we think of electricity. Electricity doesn't care who plugs in a curling iron. Electricity doesn't need proof we're good enough to make toast. Whopper 8, God only answers when he's good and ready. There is never a time when God or the force isn't guiding you. And you do not have to wait for any green light or get out of jail free cards. The big guy, big it, is available 24/7. Once you are ready to focus your full attention on it, the FP guidance happens, as they say about, well, something else, through the song lyric on the radio, by the phone call from the long lost friend. The trick is to pay attention, trust, and, as I will continue to repeat, focus your full attention on it. And while you're on the topic of God's will, let's get this out on the table. There is no place in our updated picture of God for hell of everlasting torment or of a sadist who would or could attempt to put you there. Nor is there any room for the idea that sickness or deformity or death or poverty or limitation of any kind is the will of FP or God. The will of God, for those who insist on using that term, is the ceaseless longing of the Spirit in you to become all you're capable of being. Amen. Now let's get to the exercise. The method, allowing myself to become a little nutty and irrational, did open me up to a certain mystical experience. Dr. Patrick Miller. founder of the Fearless books. All right. In this experiment, you're going to devote 48 hours to looking for evidence of this all-knowing, all-perfect FP. Call it God if it feels more comfortable. Luckily, the FP exists every single place you could ever think to look. To up the stakes, you're going to ask the FP for a blessing, or what I call an unexpected gift. You're going to give it 48 hours to send you a gift you wouldn't normally receive. A surprise check in the mail, a card from an old friend, something that is truly unexpected. You don't get to specify the blessing. That comes later in experiment 4. But you do need to give a clearly defined request on a concrete deadline. And as always, it helps to ask for help in recognizing your gift. When my friend Wendy tried this experiment, she received not just one, but 2 unexpected blessings. She got a $1 an hour raise. Her boss called her out of the blue. And her brother, who lives out of state and never calls unless there's a death in the family, volunteered to help her move, something he's never done in the 6 moves she made before this one. Robin, another friend, went out to her car during the 48-hour time frame during which she was conducting the experiment and found a gorgeous handmade leather purse, a gift left by a friend who had no idea she was doing the experiment. I love the purse so much, I still carry it today, she says. Results, depending on your consciousness, vary. Some people get something simple. My friend Julie, for example, had a 2-year-old boy she'd never seen before come sit beside her on a park bench. They smiled at each other like 2 reunited soulmates. Or it might be something pretty amazing. Another experimenter, Eric, was offered a free ski trip to Lake Tahoe. Take note of how you feel about asking the energy field for a blessing. Do you feel a bit antsy? Wonder if you're being selfish? Doubt whether it's appropriate to ask for something good? This feeling provides telling insight. Maybe you don't believe you deserve a gift. That thought sends signals to the energy field and affects its resonance. Perhaps you think it's only appropriate to ask for something you need. That signal, too, is being radioed to the energy field. To do this experiment properly, you have to set aside skepticism. Not forever, just for 48 short hours. All you have to do is spend 2 measly days expecting to see proof. How freaking hard is that? Or you can sit bitching. No, that was my commentary, not hers. Expect to see the dude in living color. Expect it with your whole heart. Expect it with every ounce of your soul. Look like any good hypothesis? This one is falsifiable. If you don't hear from the FP in 48 hours, feel free to write it off. All right. That's it. Let's go and observe. So here is the sheet, like I showed you. So you have the lab report sheet, and on there you have the principle. So the dude abides principle. I love that. Nina the Mystic on those cards, the major dude upstairs, how appropriate. The theory, there is an invisible energy force or field of infinite possibilities, and it's yours for the asking. The question, does the FP, the field of potentiality, exist? The hypothesis, if there's a 24/7 energy force equally available to everyone, then I can access it at any time simply by paying attention. Furthermore, if I ask the force for a blessing, giving it a specific time frame and clear instruction, it'll send me a gift and say, my pleasure. And this is a science experiment. So we have the time required, in this case, 48 hours. You put in whatever the day's date and time, deadline for receiving the gift. She writes on here, the approach. I hate to break it to you. Yeah, FP, but folks are starting to talk. They're starting to wonder if this guy is for real. I mean, really? Like I'd be so much skin off of your chin to come down here and call off this crazy hide and seek thing you've been playing. I'm giving you exactly 48 hours to make your presence known. I want a thumbs up, clear sign, something that cannot be written off as coincidence. And there you have your research notes. And the final part is that we now have a science of spirituality that is fully verifiable and objective. Amit Gawani, PhD, retired theoretical physicist. All right. Now, I have the form right here where you can actually, I'll send it to you. You can print it off, and I'll see about even if I can convert that into a Word document. I don't know. Should be able to. So, okay, as I get back to live. What do y'all think? It's interesting. And I know the chat room, it's going 1,000 miles an hour. But any case, why not? I mean, at some point in time, we have to, I kind of consider like this. You can sit in the classroom all you want, but until you put to test that which you know, you'll never know. You see, if you only hear one side of the story, that's an opinion. It's only when you get both sides of the story can you form a foundation for truth. It is pretty cool. Yeah. Darth, yeah, you can hand it. Cool. Lucky Stone says I took it from screen capture. Screw that. I'm gonna do it myself. Lucky, that's cool. By the way, I listened to your video on the burial and cremation. Very, very good. Hey, 7P, what's up? All right. Thank you. Yeah, David. Yeah. You know, it's amazing. Hey, Cheesesteak, how you doing there, buddy? Hey, Robert V. So we all going to participate it. Listen, Robert V, you need to have the people over on the Milky Way Soul Tribe channel. I mean, this is something that we all can participate. There's a purpose for it. I've been holding off on our second group focus. I think we just need more training. We need more exercise. And look what came to us. When the student is ready, the knowledge presents itself. Well, the knowledge is presenting itself for this group that we're going to refine our talents. We're going to be able to understand that this isn't no ritual. This isn't no qualifier. This is everything. You have as much right to it as you do breathing. I mean, and I can tell you this, I'll see, I learned this, oh man, I guess nearly 40 years ago. Yeah, maybe about that. Yeah. Long time. There's actually a verse in the Old Testament where the Jewish God says, put me to the test and see if I will not open up the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing that you shall not have room enough to contain. And I will send the rains at the proper time to water your, harvest. Your harvest will be abundant. These are all parts of these things. And unfortunately, because of the system that we live in, this matrix, it is a poverty-based, debt-based system. And I don't think evil created it. By all indications, it's the light that supposedly created this, and this is nuts. So when we get into the book that we're about to get into, and you're going to see with the foundation of what we're building here, this is going to allow us to, we're going to be able to successfully overcome every thought form that has been created. Every demon, every demigod, every angel, every god, gods, goddesses, because we were never created to worship anything. We don't worship ourselves. And if there was the right to worship anything, we would worship ourselves. But most people, and I can say the vast majority, do not. So why would we then say it would be counterintuitive to our nature to worship something that we cannot see, something we cannot define? And yet we live in struggles, whether it be health, whether it be finding a new place to live, whether it's changing the mind of a landlord, being able to exert favor. You see, if these demigods, if these gods existed and whoever created it, then that shows the creative power that we give things. That's why they feed off of us. We do something they can't do. And that's why we're into this. So, hey, Big Al, how are you doing? And Deborah Truex invoking steer safe. Deborah, what's up? You off in someplace? I'm going to start reading on this. Anyway, I'm just reading that. All right, let's get into the study that we're doing here. All right. So when we left off, we had finished with the second degree. And again, I'm not going to get into the exercises. If I just like the information, it allows me to form at least what I call a much more firmer foundation for an opinion. My opinion is only going to be my opinion until my opinion becomes, either disproven or proven. And if it's proven, then that means that there is on the path to truth. All right. So Ahriman begets Oz from his own blackened flame and enters the spirit of mankind. And Dean Koontz did do a book about black lightning. I pulled it up and I read that book back in the 90s. So, yeah, interesting. All right, Ahriman, the sorceress Deva, the adversary. Now, the adversary, who is the adversary? And this is a capital A. Well, just take this from, Aramaic. This is where your Satan comes from, the adversary. All right, the adversary knew that he lacked a sense of balance, sought a mate. He brought from his own darkness of being the shadow, immolated, and blackened flame. I mean, this is some interesting mental imagery. The spirit of time by the property of darkness. Isn't it interesting? So he's creating this thing. He brought it from his own darkness of being. And remember, the light is in the darkness. It's what we learned in the first 2 degrees as we're coming here. So look where time came out. The spirit of time by the property of darkness. Interesting. This blackened flame was encircled or enveloped in black and ash colored kind. With these weapons, well, now we're finding out they're weapons. The serpent, Azul, is given lively intelligence. She is thy daughter and bride. She will devour humanity, and those who cannot rise to the Deva, she will nourish from the bodies of the dead. Now you want to know why I believe in cremation? Ain't nothing going to be feeding off me, Jack. I don't care who you are. Yet she gives life and love, beauty and hunger. Wow. Here we get that dichotomy thing here, right? You know, the yin and the yang. I think this one's colored black, but yeah. The internal hunger and lust of Ahriman, his complement and equal. Oz first went to the depths of hell, where the demons were in repose. I have to make a comment, but I'm going to continue on. She took the clothing or forms of mighty beast upon the earth, learning of the spiritual hunger of which she came into being from. That very blackened essence of Ahriman was indeed her flesh. Wow. Ahriman, the prince of darkness, held the traits of greed, pride, desire, anger, and lust within. He found in the darkness the creation of beasts and serpents, thus mingled with the following elements: smoke, which is spirit; astral plane, material hunger; shoulders, where the eagle and the twin serpents, the Daruj, the Druj, the Nasu, the Push, the Azai, the Daka, twin attributions between smoke and storm; the Vavu, unseen diva of willed future or created destiny. Now, I always get, when I see these words, when they of documents like this. It was in the Liber Lilith, you know, the Book of Og. It was also in the Book of Lamech. It's interesting when I see these terms, the Deva of willed future. Willed is intent, focus, thought, or created destiny. Interesting that in the term where you would not expect to see created destiny side by side, but this is obviously showing that destiny is not always fate. Neither is fate always destiny. Fire, with these attributes, is wish, desire, lust. It forms the head, which is the lion. In this group are beings of Oz, Ashma, Kashman, Riska, and Padmos. Storm represents air, wind, hungering spirits, change, and progression. Of the body, it is of the dragon. You have Chishmak, you have Apasha, you have Spenjari, you have Kondak, you have Ashtawahad, and you have Azi da Kaha. As the storm friend, you have the Varina. Mud and water is the atavistic knowledge of the astral plane. It forms the tail, which is the Leviathan, and the Bushiaps. Darkness is hail or matter, material world. It forms the hands and the feet, of which are the demons, the Aktasha, the Nazya, and the Arshk, and the Anzakth, or of them. Now you get into the meditation. Actually, this is kind of interesting. Utilizing the methods of the aromatic yoga to begin stirring the Kundalini, raise the fire snake within the temple of self, encircling and joining the black serpent, Ahriman, the Oz Kali Lilith, is indeed the path to inspiration, imagination, and stirring emotion. Nothing is possible without the balance of the feminine and the masculine. To believe otherwise is folly. We get into the fourth degree. Oz, the Ark Deva, teaches sexual copulation and devours their offspring. Ahriman falls into 3,000 years of slumber and is awakened by the whore. Oz went forth to the devas, or the demons, and actually you could just carry this word out, divine ones. It's what this word comes into what it really means. In the darkness of hell, she began teaching the art of sexual copulation and how to give birth to dragons and serpents. You know, it's interesting. Humanity focused all of our culture is around sex, but yet, you know, it's forbidden. We have laws. You know, they had sodomy laws in many states. They still have those laws on the book. But in the pseudo apocrypha, in the gospel, I think it's of Adam and Eve, and I don't know if it's the gospel, but it is the book of Adam and Eve. Anyway, in there, the story is that it was Satan who had to come back and basically teach them, Adam and Eve, how to have sex. They didn't know. Wasn't part of their agenda. Wasn't part of their makeup, which leads to a whole lot of other questions. Is like, well, then what the hell's going on here? I mean, if by one of the stories where we read that the Yahweh, the Elohim, raped Eve because Lilith wouldn't put up with it. And the book I'm reading along with is called The Five Gods of the Bible. One of the manifested personifications of Yahweh, he's a sexual pervert. I mean, that's all I got to say. Well, I don't know, pervert. I mean, come on, whatever your taste of chocolate may be, but man, this God, it really got a hang up on the woman's body and form. Anyway, so here we have Oz coming in and teaching it. Well, we have a similar story reflected in the Libra Lilith here as well. Lilith brought this out as well. The whole thing when she copulated with Samuel. What did they produce? Dragons, demons. It's interesting. She taught the demons of the east, the Archdevas, the beasts possessed by the Daruj, and other female demonesses, the art, and we'll just get over that word, of courtesing and using the sexual fluids, the spiritual energy that gives birth to other forms. It's kind of interesting because we find in the Libra Lilith, where Lilith sent out her daughters, and Lilith actually comes and consumes this same spiritual energy, the sexual fluids that are generated. They're unique in how they're produced by the body, and those who possess the knowledge contain enormous creative potential. It was Oz who soon watched many demons give birth to other children, from which he entered two lion fiends, and then devoured their children. Oz grew in spirit and form, entering mankind more and more. Now, it's really interesting because the metaphor that's tracking here is this. This is the corruption of the man, woman, but you understand where we're coming. And you can see it's increasing by layer and by intensity. It says Ahriman is all vileness without goodness. That is, Ahriman is cunning and awakened to the predatory laws of the universe. Ahriman is not a spirit which is blind in its own light of arrogance, yet has the knowledge of blackness and the serpent path. Orzmaz created and brought forth the method of the Answar mantra, which was much strengthened, poured at when was much strengthened, was poured at Ahriman. He fell into the darkness for 3,000 years sleeping. The war of heaven was over for now. Many devas went to Ahriman seeking to rouse the spirit of motion and chaos. You see, when they say rest in peace, it's a curse. We have been taught that to be in peace is to be in a state of euphoricness. No, in order to have an orgasmic euphoric experience, even joy, happiness, we can have all these same attributes. That's energy. In fact, that is, in one point of view, where chaos comes from. Think about it. It says, many devas went to Ahriman seeking to rouse the spirit of motion and chaos, yet none could stir him. Humanity, in its cradle of being, were led by the Gaimard called Adam, or a man of a tribe. Now, Adam says, arise, O our Father, for in the battle I shall let loose so many afflictions on the righteous man and the toiling bull, that because of my deeds they will no be fit to live. I shall take away their dignity. I shall afflict the water with the blood of the moon. I shall afflict the earth with the deluge and the burrowing creatures of the deluge Nasu. I shall afflict the fire with smoke, and bless it in the darkness of my being of the Samara Alta. I shall afflict the plants with Tapriv and Zarek. I shall afflict all the creation with Abmaz as created. She related her evil deeds so well that Ahriman was awakened, leapt up out of his swoon, and kissed the head. And I won't even go into that word. That's wanted to avoid that. Sorry for that. Anyway, that's a good way to break off. Sorry about that one particular word that wasn't meant to be there. I was just going to speed that up. But you can see what's going on here. These are energetic forces. These are magnetic forces. These are atoms. These are positons, neutrons, all in motion. And these creatures, these beings, it's the realm they exist. And if this is what has been told to us to be the good guys, the bad guys, if they're made of the same substance, then what's going on? I keep questioning as I go through these books. Well, where's this war in the dark regions? I can't find it. I only find it in the upper regions. And it's a weird construct because it makes you think, well, what is light? Even the Epic of Gilgamesh, which was borrowed by Moses in the first 10 chapters of Genesis, was in fact that in the beginning was darkness. There was no light, which we've been led in many other offshoots, even in many metaphysical circles, is that they still go back to this in the beginning. No. Darkness had no beginning. That is, are you sure you're not insane? No, actually, I am highly intelligent there, Al. Darkness, and check this out. I don't care what your religious beliefs is. Go to the beginning of any of these books. Darkness has no beginning. None. And if it has no beginning, it means it has no end. Light, on the other hand, seems to be, although we think it's infinite, seems to be very obviously limited in its ability of what it illuminates, the proximity of what one would be close to the light, and what type of light are we actually discussing here. If light is the illumination, then Lucifer, the morning star, the one who brings forth light, and that light is represented by wisdom, then what type of light are we dealing with there? Interesting, David. Yeah. I saw you, Big Al. I know this is deep stuff, folks. I get it, but you know, it plays a culture. Listen, these belief systems, particularly of what we're talking about, go all the way back to the Aryan race and older than that. It permeates all other cultures that came out of that whole region, what we call, the region of Mesopotamia, the Fertile Crescent. But it's amazing to me how it has impregnated our consciousness, yet there are older beliefs and other deities. I mean, the Mesoamericans, they told us that these beings were electrical. The original people, they knew as well. And it's interesting how their belief systems on the yin and the yang, the light and the darkness, intertwine as well. All right. I hope y'all found this at least a little bit thought-provoking. It was definitely R-rated today, but do the lab experiment. I mean, work with, I'm doing this, and I'm not telling you what is on mine, because I think this is going to be exciting. And I would like to know everyone who is doing this, who is going to participate in the experiment. Let us know. We can do it. You can do it by email. You can do it by in the chat. We can go on to Discord and say that you're going to be doing the experiment. And this is very personal. This is just, you don't tell anybody what you're doing. And let's just make the experiment for Friday at noon. And let's see, when we're doing the card reading, what we come up with. We'll see how many had an unexpected, you can call it blessing. You can call it unexpected fortune, favor. So let's do this. Annie, that's a really good point. Light is invisible until it reflects off something. Excellent, excellent, Annie. I haven't seen you before, but welcome. I saw Zigzagzilla was in. Good to see you, Z. Good to see Andre. Andrea, I guess, is that right? Did I say that right? Bree, good to see you. 7P, Theresa, how are you? So this is fun stuff, folks. I mean, it really is. I have a feeling she has 2 other books. Y'all are so good. Someone sent me, she has this one, and there's 2 others. I got a sense that if she had a follow-up, then there must be people that, I know this works. I know it works. And let's just see how everyone else sees it. All right, Lost in Space. Thank you. Appreciate it. Annie, so darkness is actuality consciousness. Yes, when you go to sleep, we fall into darkness. And it's nothing to fear. My several near-death experiences, each one of them was met by, it wasn't fearful. It was comforting is what it was. Not that I remember. All right, folks, it's been so groovy. Glad to have been here. Glad you've been here as well. And thank you, Theresa. And I'll see you tomorrow. All right. Bosto, and much love to everyone. All right. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.